Most men believe respect is something you demand, earn, or negotiate. They think it comes from success, from confidence, from dominance, from being impressive. That belief is exactly why respect never fully lands. Because women don't respect men who try to gain respect. They respect men who operate under a psychological law most men never understand. A law that governs attraction, respect, power, and emotional dynamics. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's the truth. Women respect men who do not abandon their internal position under pressure. That is the law. Everything else is secondary. This law doesn't care how attractive you are. It doesn't care how kind you are. It doesn't care how confident you sound. It only observes one thing. Do you stay rooted in yourself when tension appears? Most men fail this law instantly. A test shows up, a boundary is pushed, tone changes, interest fluctuates, and the man moves. He explains, he softens, he overcorrects, he tries to fix the moment. That movement signals weakness, not because movement is bad, but because it reveals loss of internal authority. Women do not respect men who relocate their center to maintain approval. Respect only forms around men who stay put. Another uncomfortable truth is this. Respect is not created through force. It is created through non-movement. When pressure pushes and you don't shift, when silence appears and you don't rush, when uncertainty shows up and you don't panic, that stillness is felt immediately. Another deep truth is this. Women don't consciously evaluate this law. Their nervous system does. The nervous system asks one question. Is this man emotionally self-governed? And your reactions answer instantly. Another uncomfortable realization is that most men lose respect by trying to be understood. Understanding seeking relocates power. Power never chases understanding. Another deep truth is that respect is destroyed when men emotionally negotiate. Negotiation implies insecurity. Certainty requires no negotiation. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law applies everywhere. Conversation, conflict, silence, distance, intimacy. Men who stay internally aligned gain respect everywhere. Men who bend lose it everywhere. Another deep truth is this. Women do not respect men who are emotionally flexible in the wrong moments. Flexibility under pressure feels unsafe. Safety comes from structure. Another uncomfortable realization is that respect does not come from intensity. Intensity without grounding feels chaotic. Grounded calm feels powerful. Another deep truth is that this psychological law is invisible. There is no moment where a woman says, "I respect him now." Respect simply appears or disappears based on whether the man stayed centered. Another uncomfortable realization is that men think respect comes from being liked. Being liked is easy. Being respected requires self-command. Another deep truth is this. Women respect men who do not emotionally react to provocation. Provocation is a test of center. Another uncomfortable realization is that most men hand over respect voluntarily. They do it by chasing reassurance, by explaining themselves, by trying to repair tension too quickly. Another deep truth is that this law cannot be faked. Techniques fail under pressure. Only mindset remains. Another uncomfortable realization is that respect is not about being cold. It is about being anchored. Anchored men can be warm without collapsing. Another deep truth is that women respect men who choose themselves even when attraction is on the line. Self-choice signals integrity. Integrity commands respect. Another uncomfortable realization is that respect does not grow gradually. It flips. One moment you bend, one moment you don't, and everything changes. Another deep truth is this. The law is simple. When pressure shows up, stay. Do not explain, do not justify, do not chase, do not bend. Staying communicates authority without saying a word. Another uncomfortable realization is that men fear losing connection more than losing themselves. That fear is felt. Another deep truth is that women respect men who would rather lose a moment than lose their center. Another uncomfortable realization is that respect cannot exist where self-respect is absent. Self-respect is internal alignment. Another deep truth is that once you master this law, respect becomes effortless. Not because you demand it, but because you stop giving it away. And this is only the foundation, because once you understand this law, you begin to see why respect rises around certain men instantly, why women soften around them, why tests disappear, why dynamics shift without explanation. Because the law has been obeyed. And when this law is obeyed, respect is inevitable. Intimacy tempts men to soften boundaries. Men who maintain self-alignment deepen respect. Another uncomfortable realization is that respect disappears when men over-explain their intentions. Intentions are irrelevant. Alignment is felt. Another deep truth is that this law is enforced silently. No warnings, no second chances. One moment you hold your ground, one moment you don't, and respect adjusts instantly. Another uncomfortable realization is that women respect men who do not chase fairness. Fairness-seeking reveals insecurity. Confidence does not need fairness. Another deep truth is that this law applies even when women don't like it. Respect is not moral, it is psychological. Another uncomfortable realization is that respect grows when a man does not emotionally react to distance. Distance does not threaten aligned men. Another deep truth is that women respect men who are willing to let attraction die rather than abandon themselves. That willingness is felt as power. Another uncomfortable realization is that men who master this law don't try to win arguments. They don't try to be right. They stay rooted. Rooted men don't need to win. Another deep truth is that respect is not created through words. It is created through emotional posture. Another uncomfortable realization is that posture is tested constantly, in tone shifts, in delays, in disagreement, in silence. Another deep truth is that women respect men who don't flinch. Flinching reveals fragility. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law explains why some men can say very little and still command respect, because their center does not move. Another deep truth is that respect follows men who trust themselves more than they fear loss. Fear of loss bends men. Trust straightens them. Another uncomfortable realization is that once you see this law, you realize respect was never missing. It was being given away, moment by moment, reaction by reaction, adjustment by adjustment. And when you stop giving it away, something surprising happens. You don't need to ask for respect. You don't need to demand it. You don't need to perform for it. It simply appears because the law is now being obeyed. And once it is obeyed, everything else reorganizes around it. Intimacy tempts men to soften boundaries. Men who maintain self-alignment deepen respect. Another uncomfortable realization is that respect disappears when men over-explain their intentions. Intentions are irrelevant. Alignment is felt. Another deep truth is that this law is enforced silently. No warnings, no second chances. One moment you hold your ground, one moment you don't, and respect adjusts instantly. Another uncomfortable realization is that women respect men who do not chase fairness. Fairness-seeking reveals insecurity. Confidence does not need fairness. Another deep truth is that this law applies even when women don't like it. Respect is not moral, it is psychological. Another uncomfortable realization is that respect grows when a man does not emotionally react to distance. Distance does not threaten aligned men. Another deep truth is that women respect men who are willing to let attraction die rather than abandon themselves. That willingness is felt as power. Another uncomfortable realization is that men who master this law don't try to win arguments. They don't try to be right. They stay rooted. Rooted men don't need to win. Another deep truth is that respect is not created through words. It is created through emotional posture. Another uncomfortable realization is that posture is tested constantly, in tone shifts, in delays, in disagreement, in silence. Another deep truth is that women respect men who don't flinch. Flinching reveals fragility. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law explains why some men can say very little and still command respect, because their center does not move. Another deep truth is that respect follows men who trust themselves more than they fear loss. Fear of loss bends men. Trust straightens them. Another uncomfortable realization is that once you see this law, you realize respect was never missing. It was being given away, moment by moment, reaction by reaction, adjustment by adjustment. And when you stop giving it away, something surprising happens. You don't need to ask for respect. You don't need to demand it. You don't need to perform for it. It simply appears because the law is now being obeyed. And once it is obeyed, everything else reorganizes around it. As this law becomes internalized, you start to notice something subtle. Respect no longer feels fragile. It stops depending on mood, timing, or how well things are going, because the source of respect has shifted inward. Another uncomfortable truth is this: most men think respect is lost through big mistakes. It's not. It's lost through small moments of self-betrayal. Laughing when something bothered you, agreeing when you didn't mean it, explaining when silence would have held more weight, reaching when you should have stayed. Each moment tells the same story. My center can be moved. And once that story is told, respect adjusts accordingly. Another deep truth is this: women respect men who are predictable in character, not predictable in behavior. Character is revealed when there is pressure. Behavior can be performed. Character cannot. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law exposes emotional dishonesty. Not lying to others, lying to yourself. Saying yes when you mean no, accepting what you don't respect, avoiding discomfort to preserve connection. That dishonesty leaks, and respect evaporates around it. Another deep truth is that women respect men who allow friction. Friction is not conflict, it's the natural resistance between two intact people. Men who avoid friction avoid depth. Depth creates respect. Another uncomfortable realization is that men often mistake calmness for weakness, but calmness under pressure is the strongest signal there is. Chaos is easy, stillness is hard. Another deep truth is this: women respect men who do not emotionally chase alignment. Alignment forced feels artificial. Alignment allowed feels real. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law punishes over-availability. Availability without boundaries feels cheap. Bounded availability feels valuable. Another deep truth is that respect grows when a man does not seek emotional permission. Permission-seeking reverses polarity. Polarity sustains respect. Another uncomfortable realization is that women respect men who don't rush to repair tension. Repair-seeking reveals discomfort with silence. Silence held calmly reveals strength. Another deep truth is that this law is enforced during attraction spikes. When interest rises, pressure increases. Men who lean fail. Men who remain grounded gain respect. Another uncomfortable realization is that men often lose respect right after intimacy. Not because intimacy is wrong, but because they softened their center. Another deep truth is that respect deepens when a man remains himself, even when closeness tempts him to merge. Another uncomfortable realization is that women respect men who don't emotionally absorb their moods. Absorption creates instability. Stability creates trust. Another deep truth is that this law does not reward emotional extremes. It rewards emotional consistency. Another uncomfortable realization is that respect collapses when men begin monitoring how they are being treated. Monitoring hands over power. Another deep truth is that women respect men who remain self-directed, even in connection. Connection without self-direction feels hollow. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law explains why some men are respected, even when women disagree with them. Agreement is not required. Alignment is. Another deep truth is that women respect men who don't emotionally explain their standards. Standards lived are stronger than standards spoken. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law is ruthless but fair. It doesn't care about intention, it cares about posture. Another deep truth is that posture is communicated through what you tolerate. Toleration reveals boundaries. Another uncomfortable realization is that respect grows when a man is willing to disappoint. Disappointment does not kill respect. Self-betrayal does. Another deep truth is that women respect men who trust their own perception over external validation. Validation seeking weakens posture. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law explains why respect often disappears silently. There is no argument, no explanation, just a shift. Another deep truth is that once you master this law, you stop worrying about being respected because your behavior aligns automatically. You no longer bend instinctively. You no longer react emotionally. You no longer chase reassurance. And because of that, respect stabilizes. Not because you asked for it, but because you stayed where you were. And that stability is unmistakable. Because in a world where most people move under pressure, the one who doesn't becomes impossible to ignore. And this is where the law reveals its full power. Because respect doesn't just rise, it locks in. And once it locks in, the entire dynamic changes. Because now you are no longer being evaluated, you are being trusted. And trust opens a completely different door. When trust replaces evaluation, the dynamic changes in a way most men never experience. Women stop checking, they stop testing, they stop subtly pushing to see what moves you, because they already know the answer. Nothing does. Another uncomfortable truth is this: trust does not come from reassurance, it comes from reliability of self. A man who reacts differently depending on pressure cannot be trusted. A man who remains himself regardless of circumstance can. Another deep truth is that women trust men whose emotional responses are predictable in one way only. They will not abandon themselves. That predictability creates safety. Another uncomfortable realization is that this psychological law is the foundation of leadership. Not leadership over others, leadership over self. Self-led men feel stable. Stability invites trust. Another deep truth is that women relax around men who do not need to control outcomes. Control-seeking reveals anxiety. Anxiety destroys trust. Another uncomfortable realization is that trust grows when a man allows emotional space without filling it. Filling space feels intrusive. Allowing space feels respectful. Another deep truth is that women trust men who do not emotionally escalate to win. Winning signals insecurity. Grounded men do not need to win. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law explains why women often trust men who say very little. Words are unnecessary when posture is clear. Another deep truth is that trust deepens when a man does not emotionally chase repair after conflict. Repair seeking reveals fear of loss. Fear weakens structure. Another uncomfortable realization is that women trust men who are willing to let silence exist after tension. Silence held calmly feels safe. Another deep truth is that trust is built when a man does not emotionally collapse during distance. Distance reveals independence. Independence is trusted. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law punishes emotional volatility. Volatility feels unpredictable. Unpredictability destroys trust. Another deep truth is that women trust men who are not emotionally dependent on being understood. Understanding is optional. Self-trust is essential. Another uncomfortable realization is that trust grows when a man's boundaries are consistent without being enforced. Consistency removes doubt. Another deep truth is that women trust men who do not emotionally chase alignment. Alignment forced feels artificial. Alignment allowed feels real. Another uncomfortable realization is that trust does not require constant presence. It requires consistent identity. Another deep truth is that women trust men who are okay being disliked. Dislike does not threaten their sense of self. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law explains why trust disappears quietly. One moment, the center moves. One moment, it doesn't. And trust adjusts immediately. Another deep truth is that trust is not emotional closeness. It is emotional certainty. Certainty that the man will remain himself. Another uncomfortable realization is that women trust men who do not emotionally outsource decision-making. Outsourcing signals weakness. Another deep truth is that trust grows when a man does not emotionally negotiate boundaries. Negotiation reveals uncertainty. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law applies even when women disagree strongly. Disagreement does not break trust. Instability does. Another deep truth is that women trust men who are calm in moments that matter. Calm communicates mastery. Another uncomfortable realization is that trust cannot be faked. It must be lived consistently. Another deep truth is that once trust is established, respect no longer fluctuates. It stabilizes. And stabilized respect changes everything, because now you are no longer navigating attraction, you are anchoring it. And when attraction is anchored in trust, it deepens instead of fading. This is where the law reveals its long-term power, because respect that becomes trust does not disappear, it compounds. And that compounding creates something rare, emotional safety paired with polarity. And that combination is what very few men ever achieve. Which brings us to the final realization, because mastering this law does not just change how women respect you, it changes who you become under pressure. At the deepest level, this psychological law is not about women at all. It's about self-governance. Women simply respond to men who govern themselves under pressure. That's why respect feels automatic around certain men, not because they demand it, but because they are not available to be moved. Another uncomfortable truth is this: the moment you stop trying to manage respect, respect appears. Because management implies fear. Fear collapses authority. Another deep truth is that women don't respect men who try to hold power. They respect men who don't need it. Need exposes dependency. Dependency weakens posture. Another uncomfortable realization is that mastering this law means accepting loss without collapse. Loss of approval, loss of attention, loss of comfort. Men who remain intact through loss become respected instantly. Another deep truth is that respect does not come from being right, it comes from being rooted. Rooted men do not argue for position, their presence establishes it. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law is enforced in silence. No warnings, no explanations, just a quiet shift in how a woman feels around you. Another deep truth is that women feel safest around men who do not emotionally chase reassurance. Reassurance seeking destabilizes connection. Stability strengthens it. Another uncomfortable realization is that once you master this law, attraction and respect stop being fragile. They no longer rise and fall with mood. They anchor. Another deep truth is that women respect men who can hold their ground without hardening, soft without collapsing, firm without force. That balance is rare. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law explains why respect disappears the moment a man begs, pleads, or explains himself emotionally. Those behaviors relocate power instantly. Another deep truth is that self-respect precedes external respect. External respect mirrors internal posture. Another uncomfortable realization is that mastering this law makes you emotionally unshakable. Not cold, not distant, just self-led. Another deep truth is that women don't respect men who need to be chosen. They respect men who choose themselves first. Another uncomfortable realization is that when you stop bending for approval, dynamics reorganize naturally. You don't need to confront, you don't need to demand, you simply remain. Another deep truth is that respect does not come from asserting dominance, it comes from refusing to abandon your internal position. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law operates everywhere: dating, relationships, conflict, silence, distance. Wherever pressure appears, the law observes one thing: do you stay? Another deep truth is that women respect men who would rather lose the interaction than lose themselves. That willingness is felt as strength. Another uncomfortable realization is that once you live by this law, you stop worrying about respect entirely because your behavior aligns automatically. You no longer explain, you no longer chase, you no longer negotiate your worth. And because of that, respect stabilizes. Another deep truth is that mastering this law makes presence effortless. Tests disappear, power dynamics simplify, interactions feel calm. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law does not make you dominant, it makes you solid. And solidity is what women trust. Another deep truth is that when respect stabilizes, attraction deepens instead of fading, because attraction anchored in respect does not erode. Another uncomfortable realization is that this law does not require aggression, it requires restraint. Another deep truth is that restraint under pressure is the strongest masculine signal there is. Now, if this video helped you understand why respect rises around certain men without effort, and why mastering your internal position changes everything, there is one video you should watch next. Because respect only lasts when it's supported by presence. And that's exactly what I break down in my video called How to Make Women Feel Your Presence Without Trying. That video shows how internal calm, self-alignment, and grounded stillness create a magnetic effect without effort. Watch that next. Because once you master this law, stop abandoning yourself and learn to stay rooted under pressure, respect no longer needs to be earned. It becomes inevitable.